On October 27, 1942, as dawn broke over the South Pacific, roughly 420 miles northeast of Guadalcanal, Commander Edward P. Parker clung to the railing of the USS Northampton. He stared in grim silence as the fiery wreckage of the USS Hornet vanished below the surface, claiming 140 U.S. sailors, along with the final active fleet carrier in the Pacific theater. Blazes from her breached fuel compartments lit up the sea for miles around, casting a fiery glow that mirrored the dire collapse of U.S. naval strength. 4 carriers gone in 10 months. If things keep up like this, we'll be empty-handed by Christmas, he jotted in his private journal, a remark that could have landed him in a court-martial for pessimism had his bosses uncovered it. Amid the haze and shadows, Parker had just seen the 4th U.S. fleet carrier sink that year. Lexington during the Coral Sea clash on May 8th, Yorktown at Midway on June 7th, Wasp struck by torpedoes near Guadalcanal on September 15th, and now Hornet amid the Santa Cruz fray on October 27th. The Imperial Japanese Navy, once belittled by U.S. analysts as mere imitators lacking originality, had methodically wiped out more than half of America's carrier fleet in the Pacific. In dockyards stretching from Yokosuka to Kure, Japanese laborers were steadily expanding their armada with fresh carriers, even as the U.S. hemorrhaged vessels at an unthinkable pace. Meanwhile, 3,700 miles distant in Newport News, Virginia, a welder called Margaret Thompson prepared to start her evening shift, a routine that would ultimately disprove Parker's bleak outlook. Unbeknownst to either of them, this nadir of hopelessness signaled the dawn of naval history's greatest manufacturing triumph, a calculated showcase of U.S. This shift from ruin to supremacy stemmed not from strategic genius or tech leaps, but from a deeper force, the total harnessing of America's democratic industry, reshaping homemakers into welders, rural lads into hull assemblers, and forging the whole country into the very arsenal of democracy that Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had dreaded above all. Background: the mounting crisis. The downfall kicked off on May 8, 1942 in the Coral Sea. The USS Lexington, one of the U.S.'s 2 massive pre-war carriers repurposed from battlecruiser designs, endured 2 torpedoes and 3 bomb impacts from Japanese carrier planes. Although valiant firefighting and repairs briefly stabilized her, fuel leaks ignited devastating chain blasts from aviation tanks. The Lady Lex sank, dragging 216 crewmen with her, the first U.S. fleet carrier casualty of the conflict. Captain Frederick Sherman, her skipper, would later tell Congress, "We entered the war with 7 Pacific fleet carriers. Japan had 10 to start. Every flag officer grasped the numbers. We couldn't sustain even trades, let alone heavier losses." The next strike landed barely a month on. By June 7, 1942, the USS Yorktown, hastily mended after Coral Sea wounds in a mere 48 hours at Pearl Harbor, fell to torpedoes from Japanese sub I-168 right after her pivotal part in Midway's success. While Midway delivered a pivotal win by dooming 4 Japanese carriers, the U.S. still forfeited one of its scarce fleet carriers. The third disaster struck September 15th as the USS Wasp, patrolling off Guadalcanal, absorbed 3 hits from Japanese submarine I-19. She blazed for hours until U.S. destroyer O'Brien had to sink her. From the 7 fleet carriers in the Pacific at war's outset, America had now surrendered 3. Then arrived the devastating finale. October 26, 27, 1942, the Battle of the Santa Cruz Islands. The USS Hornet, survivor of the Doolittle mission and Midway, suffered a barrage from Japanese dive bombers and torpedo bombers in tandem. Frantic rescue attempts, including towing the Inferno away, failed as approaching Japanese warships compelled her crew to desert. Japanese destroyers Makigumo and Akigumo sealed her fate what their planes had begun in the pre-dawn gloom of October 27th. In Washington, Admiral Ernest J. King, head of naval operations, confronted lawmakers with brutal figures. "Gentlemen, Enterprise stands as our sole active fleet carrier in the Pacific. She confronts 10 Japanese ones. Basic math indicates." As the tide had already turned against us in the conflict, the extraordinary surge in mobilization kicked off. Yet, King remained unaware of Margaret Thompson and the 1.7 million laborers who would pour into U.S. shipyards by 1944. He had no inkling of Henry Kaiser, soon to slash Liberty's shipbuild times from 230 days down to just 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes. He couldn't foresee how American yards, having produced precisely one fleet carrier in 1941, would pull off the extraordinary. The shift originated not in strategy sessions of the armed forces, but in the financial ledgers at Newport News Shipbuilding. The very next day after Pearl Harbor, on December 8, 1941, yard manager Clay Bedford summoned his foreman for an urgent gathering. He declared, "Scrap all your prior knowledge of constructing vessels. We'll assemble carriers the way Ford assembles automobiles." The upheaval ignited from a straightforward insight by Helen Matthews, a recent hire and ex-seamstress amid the crisis-driven growth. Observing expert craftsmen painstakingly fastening hull panels with rivets, she posed to her boss, "Why not stitch it like cloth, a single unbroken join rather than countless spots?" Her superior chuckled at first, then paused. Opting for welding over riveting promised to trim fitting durations by 75%. However, welding demanded fresh abilities, basic ones that novices could master in mere days, unlike the years needed to cultivate elite riveters. The output boom erupted. Come summer 1943, Essex-class carriers were emerging from the slips at rates that boggled the mind. The USS Essex, whose keel was laid on April 28, 1941, entered service on December 31, 1942, merely 20 months from foundation to wartime deployment. Yet this marked only the start. Over at Brooklyn Navy Yard, first-class shipfitter Giuseppe Diageo, kin to the famed baseball star, guided a team in devising an innovative method for fitting aircraft lifts. Rather than erecting them incrementally on site, they prefabricated full elevator assemblies on shore, hoisting them aboard via enormous cranes. Savings, 6 weeks each per carrier. Innovations from Henry Kaiser's Richmond operations rippled across the sector. Prefab methods allowed superstructures and fittings to be pieced together in dedicated zones, positioned sideways or inverted for simpler, more robust welds. Tasks that once consumed 1,000 hands over a month now fell to 200 in a single week. The figures mounted at an alarming clip. USS Yorktown, CV-10, keel down December 1941, commissioned April 15, 1943. USS Intrepid, started December 1, 1941, commissioned August 16, 1943. USS Hornet, CV-12, begun August 3, 1942, commissioned November 29, 1943. USS Franklin, laid December 7, 1942, commissioned January 31, 1944. Launchings accelerated with each success. Welder Philip A. Kellogg at Bethlehem Steel's Fore River Yard chronicled the pace in his journal. In January 1943, carriers hit the water every 60 days. By June 1943, every 45 days. In December 1943, every 30 days. The Japanese must figure were wielding sorcery. The workforce surge, the true enchantment lay in the people. By April 1943, women comprised 40% of the staff on Kaiser's slipways and prefab sites. At Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Emma Rodriguez, a Mexican-American mom of 3 who'd only wielded needles before, emerged as the yard's quickest riveter. She hammered 30 perfect rivets per minute. Black workers, long excluded from expert roles in shipyards, surged in following Executive Order 8802, which banned bias in defense work. James Washington, an Alabama tenant farmer, rose to lead pipefitter at Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. He fitted fuel systems on 5 carriers, each completed swifter than the previous. These laborers weren't merely crafting vessels, they were battling mortality head-on. Each carrier-free day spelled more U.S. sailors and Marines perishing amid Pacific atolls. Walls in every yard displayed fleet snapshots. USS Enterprise battles solo. She requires allies. Forge them swiftly. The innovation surge. Pace arose not solely from manpower, but from groundbreaking assembly approaches. Engineers at New York Naval Yard pioneered sectional builds. Gone was the sequential keel-to-top erection. Instead, they crafted whole modules, pre-wired, plumbed, and aired, then slotted them like oversized Lego pieces. Standardized parts optimized the flow. shrinking timelines to as few as 14 months for the quickest ones. Identical pumps, panels, and connectors appeared across every carrier where feasible. Components from Detroit factories slotted directly into builds at Newport News, Brooklyn, or Philadelphia. No alterations needed. The Essex Armada. The Essex class emerged as the pivotal lineup of combat vessels in U.S. naval annals. These vessels weren't mere stand-ins for the vessels they'd lost. They were larger, swifter, and far more advanced than any predecessors. Displacing 2,700 tons apiece, each could accommodate 90 to 100 planes and cruise at 33 knots, outrunning the majority of destroyers. The Japanese took note right away. Commander Masataka Yokomiya, serving as air staff officer for the Japanese combined fleet, jotted in his diary following intelligence updates. The Americans are constructing carriers more rapidly than we can prepare pilots. Every fresh carrier outclasses everything in our arsenal. We're no longer clashing with the Navy we struck at Pearl Harbor. Come March 1944, U.S. shipyards pulled off the unthinkable, rolling out Essex-class carriers at a pace that outstripped the total output from every other country worldwide. The Kaiser phenomenon. As primary naval facilities focused on fleet carriers, Henry Kaiser transformed escort carrier assembly, the compact jeep carriers designed to shield invasion armadas and pursue subs. His Vancouver yard by itself churned out 50 such vessels, applying methods honed for Liberty ships. The USS Casablanca, flagship of the largest carrier class ever produced, progressed from keel-laying to service in under 8 months. In contrast, the Japanese escort carrier Shoho, adapted from a liner, required 2 years to finish. The logistics orchestration. Fueling every bolt, every joint, every metal sheet was a vast network spanning the land. Carrier deck steel originated in Pittsburgh, where factories operated non-stop, day and night, week after week. Aircraft aluminum hailed from Alcoa facilities in Tennessee, drawing power rivaling that of whole urban areas. In Akron, Ohio, Goodyear's facility manufactured arresting wires for carriers, each able to halt a 12,000 lb jet, screaming at 100 mph. Under manager William Davis, output soared from 10 units monthly in 1942 to 200 by 1944. The pilot preparation stream. Empty hulls offered no value without operators. Captain Daniel Gallery stepped in with an idea. Repurpose the Great Lakes for drills. The USS Wolverine and USS Sable, repurposed paddle wheel steamers turned into practice carriers, ran from Chicago's Navy Pier. By 1944, these pair qualified 500 aviators each month. The Japanese viewpoint. In Tokyo, the Imperial Naval Staff pored over reports in mounting dread. Captain Toshikazu Omi, operations head for the combined fleet, recounted in testimony, "We anticipated America would construct replacements for their sunk ships. We figured perhaps 6 or 7 fleet carriers by 1945. The reality defied understanding." Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, leading the Japanese carrier group at the June 1944 Battle of the Philippine Sea, confronted 9 U.S. fleet carriers, plus 8 light ones, using just his 6. It wasn't warfare, he reflected afterward. It was a slaughter. The manufacturing zenith. By January 1945, American yards hit a cadence that bordered on miraculous. Brooklyn Navy Yard juggled 3 carriers at once. Newport News managed builds across 6 slipways in assorted phases. The USS Lake Champlain set the pinnacle for wartime finishes, entering commission on June 3, 1945, after a mere 15 months. The toll and glory of labor. Such velocity demanded heavy losses. Over 3 fatalities struck shipyard laborers amid wartime mishaps. Margaret O'Brien grieved her spouse's death from a cable failure at Fore River Shipyard. She resumed duties the following week, joining the welding team in his stead. "Each vessel we skip building adds another gold star to some family's window," she urged her colleagues. The awe of success. Japan's capitulation envoys boarding the USS Missouri on September 2, 1945, navigated by a U.S. armada beyond belief. More than 100 carriers of every variety crowded Tokyo Bay and adjacent seas, outnumbering the cumulative naval aviation output of all other powers throughout history. Commander Tamichi Hara, among Japan's elite destroyer skippers, observed, "We'd torpedoed 4 of theirs in 1942, yet they'd triple replaced everyone." The output ledger. Among Essex-class carriers that entered battle in World War II, those commissioned and combat-tested included USS Essex, CV-9, December 31, 1942, USS Yorktown, CV-10, April 15, 1943, USS Intrepid, CV-11, August 16, 1943, USS Hornet, CV-12, November 29, 1943, USS Franklin, CV-13, January 34, 1944, USS Ticonderoga, CV-14, May 8, 1944, USS Randolph, CV-15, October 9, 1944, USS Lexington, CV-16, February 17, 1943, USS Bunker Hill, CV-17, May 24, 1943, USS Wasp, CV-18, November 24, 1943, USS Hancock, CV-19, April 15, 1944, USS Bennington, CV-20, August 6, 1944, USS Bonhomme Richard, CV-31, November 26, 1944, USS Shangri-La, CV-38, September 15, 1944. Further carriers launched but spared from action: USS Boxer, April 16, 1945, USS Lake Champlain, June 3, 1945, USS Antietam. On January 28, 1945, additional vessels entered service even after hostilities ceased. This tally excluded 9 Independence-class light carriers constructed on cruiser hulls, along with more than 100 escort carriers manufactured in that era. The shift in technology. Wartime innovations in naval construction reshaped U.S. manufacturing for good. Methods like modular assembly, automated welding, and production line shipbuilding turned into everyday norms. Shipyard laborers, skilled during the conflict, formed the core of the nation's post-war workforce. Female welders, once novices, realized they excelled at any factory job. Black Americans, previously confined to basic labor, demonstrated their aptitude for intricate tasks. The broader strategic effects. By 1945, U.S. carrier output had surpassed what the fleet required. Vessels finished ahead of the pace at which personnel could prepare them. In 1946, Admiral William Halsey told Congress, "We shifted from a shortage of carriers to an excess beyond practical use." No country has ever churned out warships at such velocity. The enduring mark of the laborers. During the 1985 commemoration of VJ Day's 40th year, a gathering occurred at Newport News Shipbuilding. More than 5,000 ex-employees showed up. Margaret Thompson, the welder featured earlier, now aged 67, addressed the assembly. "Folks now label us the greatest generation. We weren't exceptional. We were furious. The Japanese destroyed our vessels and took our young men's lives. We responded in our sole familiar manner. We constructed far more ships than they could fathom. With every rivet we secured, we declared, 'Remember Pearl Harbor.'" The overhaul of economy and society. The initiative to build carriers didn't merely boost armed forces, it redefined the whole U.S. financial system and social fabric. In Richmond, California, the populace surged from 23,000 to 130,000 within 3 years. Wages exceeding $3 billion shipyard staff circulated widely, fostering the rise of the American middle class. These facilities shattered long-standing societal divides, showing women were capable in heavy industry and that African Americans matched others' talents when afforded chances. The dominance in numbers. Come August 1945, the U.S. Navy commanded 14 Essex-class fleet carriers that had engaged in battle. 3 more Essex-class units joined but avoided frontline action. 9 Independence-class light carriers, 71 escort carriers, and lingering pre-war ships rounded out the lineup. This armada dwarfed Japan's mere 6 functioning carriers, many pilotless, and Britain's assortment of 19 varied types. The profound acknowledgement. In 1962, Rear Admiral Hideo Yano from Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force toured Norfolk Naval Shipyard, site of numerous Essex-class launches. At the spot where USS Yorktown first took to water, Yano remarked via translator, "We understood you were constructing ships, yet we couldn't conceive of this magnitude. How does one oppose a country that forges in a single facility what our whole realm produced? Our defeat wasn't against your fleet. It came from your plants, your personnel, your resolve to manufacture past all sensible bounds." The conclusive evaluation. Admiral Chester Nimitz delivered the sharpest verdict. Victory crystallized in 1943, not through combat, but via fresh carrier debuts. Once we could forfeit a carrier and already have two successors afloat, as Japan struggled to offset even one casualty, success became inevitable by sheer arithmetic. Nowadays, that manufacturing marvel's heritage persists. Practices forged from 1942 to 1945 endure as shipbuilding fundamentals. Yet, the paramount inheritance might be the proof of what unified democracies accomplish. Over 36 months, the U.S. evolved from 4 sunk carriers and looming loss to unmatched carrier dominance that guaranteed triumph. The crew behind this feat illustrated that democracy's supreme asset isn't raw armament, but output potential. Free citizens' power to surpass, fabricate more lavishly, and decisively overpower despotism. Progressing from 4 vessels destroyed to 14 Essex-class carriers, battle-tested epitomizes history's finest industrial counter to wartime peril. Most of those laborers have passed, yet their triumph endures. Amid mankind's bleakest phase, as fascism menaced liberty's flame, U.S. workers unleashed the mightiest wave of creation ever seen. The 1942 losses, Lexington, Yorktown, Wasp, and Hornet, weren't merely offset, they expanded exponentially. Every successor outshone its predecessor. Each symbolized democracy's gift for turning calamity to conquest. Ultimately, Japan fell not to U.S. maneuvers or maneuvers on the field. They succumbed to Margaret Thompson and her arc, to the masses of Americans who showed democracy's truest power resides in the boundless output of liberated folk bound by common goal. From those 4 carriers gone to 14 Essex-class stalwarts, even amid obstacles on the battlefield, the statistics paint a picture of profound change that ranks as the most remarkable evidence in history of the feats free citizens can accomplish when their liberties face peril. They went far beyond assembling vessels. They crafted success, liberty, and tomorrow. Their enduring impact endures timelessly in the engraving on the monument at Newport News Shipbuilding. At that site, U.S. laborers countered despotism with iron might, totalitarianism with emancipation, and loss with humankind's most astonishing industrial triumph.